Back,
Thank you.
Dimitri Hines. Oh, there it is.
Alan, I forgot to mention before that this is being recorded.
Yeah, I saw that. It's not a
Okay,
problem. I
good.
mean, if I'm going to look like an idiot, I don't care at this point.
Neither do I.
it's I took so much ridicule. I was getting there was a Navy guy that they hired, um, fresh out of the Navy, and was he Navy or Air Force? Anyway, he started like, because I was vocal. I'm like, that's not right. That shit shouldn't have happened. And so he started like fucking with me. And I just, that's after, and then I left. So anyway, let's back to that presentation. That would be great. I'm,
All right, see if I can figure out how to share screen again. And yeah, here
so
we
what
go.
I was, when I'm talking about glass, I'm not talking glass from a building.
Right, I understand. This would be the silica.
Yes. Now this, from what I read in boring, when they did the boreholes to look at the granite in that Danny Boy shot. So they were expecting, they thought there might be glass fused to the inside of the cavity, like volcanic glass.
Yeah,
And that's not what they found. They found that a lot of it was granularized and pushed up with the gases.
like
And
like silicon dioxides and the gases, right?
just like stones, they were just like grains of glass,
Oh,
all shattered, crushed,
okay. I can imagine how that would occur.
and that was all kind of pushed up with the overburden.
Right, I understand that not only did the glass that was down lower
Yeah,
melt and fuse at the bottom, become a pool, but the stuff that happened subsequently with the burst
yes,
was melted and literally became airborne.
yeah. And I
And when it did, it reestablished itself as glass, like the microspheres.
exactly as it cooled. Yeah. But it was also crashed because it was so fast. The reaction is just like super fast.
Yep.
When it expands, that expansion is so fast, and it creates a tremendous pressure. That I think they said they had an expectation that glass would have formed on the inside of the crater, but
It could very
I'm
well
not
have.
quite clear about
Some of
that.
it very well could have. They were pressure washing the inside of that cavity to
Right.
get anything that was, within the zone of that intersurface fracture where the magma met the surrounding bedrock.
Bedrock. Yeah.
Just hollow.
They said about 2 feet out from the that melted type stuff, from that edge of the cavity.
Yeah.
Go 2 feet through that melted stuff in this Danny Boy shot in their
Yes.
doors.
Yeah.
They found that's where the crushed rock was.
Very good.
So that right. So yeah,
I want to show you a really interesting detail here. Actually, two
Yeah,
correspond. Uh, Now we know that this and this are about 40 feet below the pre-existing bedrock surface.
almost at the same level. It's almost
Right. The bottom here and the bottom here are 40 feet, looking like it's within a foot.
that's if I wouldn't expect that symmetry.
Yeah. And this, there were different types of rock. There was the schist and pegmatite. So there are different minerals having different resistant and conductive values to them. So the
Right.
shape of these from the top is not perfectly spheroid, but there's a good reason for that, I mean, energy, is going to move to where it can, and then
Exactly. It's going to follow the fractures.
follow the fractures, and that's where this really comes in. This area right here,
Yeah.
a fascinating detail, and we'll get to this in a minute, looking at the damage reports. Look at the elevation on this end of the cavity here. Look at the steepness. Look at the steepness here and this, and relative steepness here, relative to the, to steepness here. But that's relative to hitting a wall, and saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop here. It becomes a vertical.
So
Almost a
my, of course, you want to know what's the difference in the type of material.
And what was there before? We're going to go back to the original Liberty Street, the corner of building number 4, right here. Looking at the corner of building number 4 in Liberty Street, that this is the old rock till-filled valley, and it crossed under Liberty Street.
Okay.
It crossed under Liberty Street. This is kind of weird, and it'd be really, I'm really curious about this. This detail here in particular, especially at this end, right around Liberty Street.
Yeah, I see that.
Uh, there's no longer, I mean, they didn't take the survey out here.
Right.
But this detail here is just very telling. And it has a lot to do with what happened here. This is the location of the South Tower. And here's where your orientation questions come in, I'm sure.
Right.
Because we have damage reports which are oriented differently.
Yes.
This is the North Tower, this is the North Tower and this is the South Tower. So this is turned 90 degrees to the clockwise from.
Right. So we have north going kind of
This way.
diagonally to the right. I see in the top left-hand corner, I see a north arrow. See deep hole, your cursor?
Yes, that's correct. That would be the
Okay,
North
so
arrow. Yeah,
orientation.
I'm sorry. Yep. And this would be the South Tower. And this is building number 4. And this is what they call the deep hole,
Right.
which that detail on the corner appears to be the end. So at some point, there was a huge thermonuclear event here. I'm surmising this. This is and also here. And this one here was much greater in magnitude than the event that occurred here. So as we look back at the a picture, this is the South Tower,
The giant hole is
and this one here is the North Tower.
over here, out of there.
Right, this would have been the location of the North Tower, and this would have been the location of the South Tower. This chart here was done by some German investigators. I found this on on a Google search for WTC bathtub images.
Right. Do you have any dates?
What's that?
This one is February 22nd.
Yeah. Okay, I want to keep this handy because I want to be able to find that later. So yeah, this was done on February 22nd. You can see that there is a pumper and an excavator working on the site early, shortly after they removed all the overburden, because they're still working to reduce the heat.
So the pumper is pumping water in.
Yes.
Now,
These
this
are all
water-
things that-
is this water coming out, or is it just leaking out?
Yeah, you can actually see the water coming out of the pumper right here.
Oh, so it's just going into the ground, and then they're not pumping it out of the ground,
Right, at this point here, they're just pumping it into the ground.
and it's just going away as steam, or what?
At some point it is. You can see what appears to be some steam rising, but I can't really be clear on that. So at some point they'd got it cool enough that they were able to pump water and it was no longer producing steam.
The reason I ask is because I know there was tritium found.
Yes, I've heard that was found near building, or underneath, in the water underneath building 6 over here. This would
Yeah,
have been-
on the basement level that corresponds, I think, with the Cortlandt Street passageway or something.
Right, that would have been right through here.
Right through here.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, right this is where, I guess, where they found the tritium. I could see the point
Well, they
five.
also talked about finding it in the ground, traces of it, a substantial amount in the groundwater over here.
I'm sure they did because it's very hydrophilic. Once tritium and, it's attracted to water and it
Yeah,
creates heavy water, like
yeah, it is what, yeah, exactly.
creates heavy water with double the hydrogen or
Yeah,
even three hydrogens. And that stuff they were pumping off the site, they couldn't get a good, they've already diluted it by the
yeah,
time they measured it.
yeah,
So, and the half-life is what, 16 days?
yeah. Well, yeah, the type of devices, and this is where looking into Project Plowshare and getting to understand how controllable and how to reduce of course, reducing any chances of measurable fallout in the atmosphere or stuff that would land on the ground and be part of the dust. You got
Yeah.
iron microspheres and you've got traces of unreacted thermite in the dust.
I
But
know
where
which
is all these?
600C, 650C, easy, 650 Celsius. But I'm not sure what I'm thinking hydrogen in this, and they used a primary of some sort to set off a hydrogen reaction.
Absolutely. Now, the neutron thermonuclear devices fit the bill in every way.
Yes, yes, because it minimizes the fallout. Currently, they can use a laser to, and I'm sure in the 90s this was all well known, and I'm sure Dr. Jones knows this because he was a specialist in metal catalyzed fusion.
Yes. Another friend of mine was too. Are you familiar with Mitchell Schwartz?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Oh
That
man,
wasn't my specialty. So Mitchell
I'll have to if he's still around. He's an old friend, and he was into cold fusion and worked with Malloy at MIT on this.
Schwartz, huh?
Yeah, Mitchell Schwartz, Dr. Mitchell Schwartz. We have way too many commonalities here, Alan.
Okay, so Dr. Schwartz and Dr. Jones. He's metal catalyzed fusion. Basically, now that's the way that they're going. Is they're making fuel pellets that are the size of a pea, which are actually a frozen piece of heavy water, a little tiny speck of heavy water, and it's frozen. And basically, that keeps the two, I guess they're trying to push the neutrons together, and it keeps them close enough together so that they can put it in a holoron, which is going to be the primary way to excite this material into an explosion. And in this the targeting place that they have now out there in Lawrence Livermore, they're putting these fuel pellets, which is basically a couple of, frozen heavy water type of thing, maybe a deuterium and, the heavy water and the three hydrogens together, and they want to force them together.
Right, and the way that they were able to dial the yield from what I've gotten from the wiki, and again, I'm a generalist, but the amount of they produced a gas in order to catalyze the reaction, and the amount of gas that they injected into the reaction chamber regulated the amount of the yield. The yield. If they didn't, they inject a small amount of this reactive element in, it would give you like this much. If they injected more, and it would give you this much of a reaction, thermal release.
Now they very much control. They have in this fusion experiment that they've been doing, in the reaction that they're using these pellets, fuel pellets in. The fuel pellet, they have to keep replacing the pellets and keep feeding it pellets to keep the reaction going, because there's never enough energy to sustain a like, how fusion, there's never enough free neutrons to keep combining to keep the reaction.
Right. So you're talking about a controlled, long-term reactive.
Yes.
Yeah. Not
So
not
this is
not
where
an instantaneous.
my problem comes in with the um, with this reaction going on for months in the basement, and they're dumping water and dumping water and dumping, and it's still hot.
Well, the reaction wasn't going on for months, Alan.
Right.
We have a magma down there, a mass of molten rock,
Yeah,
and
that is
it's like you could have done some great geothermal heating during the winters following that.
well. That's an interesting thing because then you can kind of estimate. They have a piece of and a size. I'm sure we could get an idea how many calories were given off from the molten stuff. I mean, for me, it just seems as if that instant reaction
Yep.
would create that much magma type of thing, and it would take that long to cool. I
Yeah.
guess that makes sense, but that's not what my natural inclination would be. My inclination is that there's still some sort of reaction. I very well may be wrong.
And there could very well be reactive stuff happening, but not that initial burst.
No, because I know granite has uranium in it, natural, but it's that's where we get our radon in New York from.
Yep.
We have issues with basements getting radon coming up, and people getting lung cancer. So
Right.
we have a whole program in New York because of the Marcellus shale and the granite giving off this radioactive gas that hurts people. So I digress.
Well, I'm going to digress for a moment too, along that line, because one of my good friends, Bill Brandon, is a federally employed geologist and is now working for the EPA in Washington. He's working directly out of the Washington office, and I would love to get you and Bill on a call together.
Yeah. And I'm still amazed. Whitman sat on these EPA reports from the air. There's air sensors. There's
These people are sociopaths.
red
They're-
ratnet. Yeah, I believe they have no conscience, or they're so deluded with their own power.
Right. Narcissistic sociopaths.
Yes. Okay. I'm a bit associated. I won't go any farther.
That's okay. I am too.
This
So
triggers
we can let that one go. Bye.
Yeah, let that one go.
Yep.
Yeah. So and I don't want to dwell on people. I want to dwell on measurable things.
Absolutely. That's
And that was my takeaway with Dr. Jones. His credibility to me is, after watching that last movie, his credibility just went up even tenfold, in my opinion, because of what he disclosed about pressure for him to stop and the bribes,
yeah.
stuff. I'm just like, yeah.
Well, I've been ridiculed by a number of the heaviest hitters in the alleged 9/11 truth movement, and I don't take it personally.
No, you can't. Because
As a matter of fact, each
gotta be
time
an
I've
open
been
discussion.
each time I've been ridiculed or attacked, it drives me on to the next phase of damn it, I apparently haven't done my work well enough.
Exactly.
So to be able to present it in a way that it's essentially incontrovertible, or it can be at least arguable, and hopefully to find somebody with a reasonable scientific argument that would have something else, explain it in a different way that makes sense, but it has to make
Sure.
sense.
Now, a lot of this stuff, photographs, this stuff, it's just like still coming out. I mean, there's still information that hasn't been disclosed that we don't have that would shed a lot more light on this. And that, of course, to me would be those What happened to RadNet, radiation network that's been around since God knows when? Where's that data? Where's the data from the? I'm surprised. The only reason we have this data here is because you have open data sources.
Well, people were searching for this and were able to get some of the raw data and make presentations that you could sort of relate to. And this is, one of the presentations that Richard Gage, by the way, did a brilliant presentation on the seismology.
Yes.
And the timing of all the events. And without that, I wouldn't have a foundation to build this on.
And I'm actually, I was looking for, and I cannot find it anymore, the tourist videos from across the river that were taken at river level, basically on the dock of basically before there. It's a tourist taking the skyline before the airplane hits, and there's an explosion and smoke coming out of the basement of the building. Yes. And then the plane hits.
Right. So this is what, again, this is
comes from the other side.
This is where my interpretation of the number of events that occurred during the day, this is where everything gets interpretive. William Rodriguez testified that he had a friend that came out of an elevator shaft that had the door blown off with the skin coming off. That stuff that we look at as smoke, I believe, was steam.
Yeah.
And I believe it was generated beneath building number 4, because I believe that this was the first event that occurred on 9/11. And that steam that you could see rising was generated from the reactions that happened here. And high pressure always goes to low, and this was all sub-basement, shared sub-basement level. So I can only imagine the number of people that were killed that were in the sub-basement levels over here and in the trolleys in the transit system as that was occurring. And there's William Rodriguez, I think he was in the North Tower, I can't remember, but this steam that was generated just filled this superheated steam, filled this and scalded the skin off of. People that survived had their skin scalded off. Yeah. So this is what I look at. I've always looked at it from the technical side.
Right.
But thinking about understanding what happened here, and that so many people that weren't even thought about in the aftermath were killed and injured before the first plane even struck. Just thinking about the timeline of this, they're not thought about. Nothing that happened down here around this time. Of course, the firefighters and the first responders are the people that we're going to think about, because they went running into these buildings.
Yes. Understand. Can we scroll down just to the next elevation and keep going back down to the those craters. Yeah, and that to me, I really didn't realize that you actually had those two pictures with the two craters under the footprints of 1 and 2.
Well, that was again German, a couple of German researchers that provided that picture.
It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
See, those are subsistence craters. They're that kind of. Yeah, that's supposed to be like bedrock.
This is what they call the deep hole right here.
Okay.
And this is the definitions of the crater beneath the South Tower. So this is apparently whatever happened, and you can still see a little bit of the steel that's being
Yeah,
pulled
that's
out.
rebar. That's just a massive rebar, and the concrete's just gone.
Yeah.
Some chunks here and there.
Well, again,
Where did that come from?
you've seen this animation here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
and I've actually seen the real photos from that paper I was looking at.
Yep. So I've covered the bases when it comes to this, and this is the most
Yes.
resisted subject that in the 9/11 in quotes truth community, or the most controversial subject,
Well,
because
because it's got a grain of truth to it. That's why it's controversial. They can't,
and what
they can't
happens is
explain those holes. Explain them. Explain why there's holes in the bedrock.
yeah,
And they're going to say, "Oh, well, they're not holes in the bedrock. They're just photographs." And you break out your, well, here's the measurements in Building 4. Uh, and it's just, to me, it's just like a question that can't be answered.
well
And
it
the only
can be
answers you have are high explosives of some sort. But what can make that type of cavity?
right.
Make that subsistence back in?
What can produce
How
that
much
much?
dynamite
No,
would have
exactly, and that's so well covered.
tremendous?
Yeah, that's so well covered in Project Plowshare when they
Yes,
compare the amount of conventional explosives that you would
absolutely.
need.
That's
I mean,
what I was,
you would literally have to have a cavity that size filled with that kind of explosives.
more than that, actually.
Yeah,
What I understand, it would take, yeah, so there is no, I mean, I understand that people don't, their mind can't go there because they have this association of fallout and, people dying from radiation poisoning or whatever. But who's to say that some of these survivors aren't dying from a radiation? The number one cancer is thyroid cancer,
yeah,
and that's iodine 131. Is it that gets
yeah,
in there and kills your thyroid, causes that kind of cancer? That's one of the causes.
yeah.
You know, lung stuff, leukemia is another, blood
Yeah.
cancers. That's
Well,
another.
lung cancer, definitely asbestos and
Asbestos, yeah.
yeah,
So you really can't go to
you
that one.
can't. Yeah,
But these two are particularly, the blood cancers and the thyroid,
right,
closely associated with nuclear radioactive particles. And I'm
right.
surprised that there's not a medical person out there who has biopsied and looked for a nuclear material, because it would still be expressing radiation while in the body once it's incorporated into the body. So if somebody's, it's like when they did the autopsies on the radon girls or whatever they were, when they put the glow in the dark stuff back in on all the dials and all that stuff.
Was that radium?
Radium, yes, radium girls. They disinterred them during some sort of court trial, and their bones glowed in the dark because the calcium
Holy
would
fuck!
absorb this. And there was a big lawsuit back in the early 20th century
Holy shit!
around, around war times, I guess, because all through the war they were licking their paintbrushes and
Oh
dipping it
Jesus!
and then
Right.
putting the details on the watch faces and the equipment faces of the military gear.
May I digress for just 1 second?
Sure.
I have a Rolex that I found in a parking lot that I had fixed up, and
Right.
they painted new radium on the hands and on the dial numbers.
Yeah. And I don't know how they do it now, but it's still kind of amazing. It's got to be done in a very controlled way to do that.
Yeah.
I really, and apparently they use on dials not radium anymore, but uh, is it tritium? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'd have to look it up again. I don't want to make a bad guess here, but they're using some other material at this point, and they were using that material supposedly in fire and in detectors or smoke detectors and in radios of the firemen to account for this, um, you know, stuff in the basement that they found.
Okay.
They were using that as an excuse. Well, we can account, and to me, it just didn't make sense.
Right.
Because if they're diluting it with water for months and months and months, and then they take a sample, and then they're trying to say, well, that much material can be accounted for by these very small devices being destroyed and burned up and falling all the way into the basement. I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
And you've got evidence of other activity. This is, to me, is not slam dunk, but
No, it's a lot of surmise, making, looking at one thing and correlating it with another, saying that this
absolutely
if this happened here,
synthesis. Yeah.
and I have really good evidence that there are these 40-foot spheroid cavities beneath building number 4. Why, I don't know, but they are there.
And then
And then
there's the
looking at the
evidence.
subsidence craters, and then looking at the way building number 7 went down, and that was the last bit of work, to clarify my thesis on the explosive sequence and what type of devices were used. Now we're going to run out of time again
Right.
in about 8 minutes. Do you want to continue this now, or do you want to set up a time in the future, Alan?
Well, we could talk some more in the future. I gotta dig down into that research papers. I've been putting it off. Sometimes my mind doesn't want to go there.
Right.
I got to take that break,
Yeah.
as you know.
Yeah, I do. Now I'm going to just share the last, and this was after Richard Gage had Captain Patterson on it, who was testified to being on Richard's conversation. Said, I was there, and this is what I experienced. And his experiences included the earthquake, rumbling, the shaking of the earth, seconds before the collapse of building number 7.
Mhm.
And that was followed by a series of airborne concussive, evidence of concussive airborne explosions. So
I've seen video of that with the firemen walking away or walking towards the building, and somebody walking away with like a roll of wire or something on his shoulder, and says, "Hey, don't go in there. Those buildings are coming down."
right.
And boom, and there was like a fireman who was on the telephone, and it's like, yeah.
And then there were the boom, 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 boom. So again, I surmise that similar to what occurred beneath building number 4. Now this is where the east penthouse was. It was up here,
Yeah,
up
yeah,
above this. That's what you saw go down first. You saw that crypt that it literally looked like it fell into a hole.
yeah, it did.
So I believe that they created a subsidence at this point here by utilizing a thermonuclear device, probably around 20 to 30 feet beneath the surface, similar to what was on building number 4, followed by a series of conventional explosives set in the sub-basement level near or at each column or possibly below it. I would venture to say it was probably airborne because of the sound, the concussive sound that was able to be heard.
Yes.
And I believe that those were, the series was meant to take out these supporting columns from left to right in the series of 5 or 6 bang, 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 bang.
And then they had the cutter charges.
Well, those were done early in the day.
Yeah, they
All of
burning.
all of the severing was, all of the burning was, the cutting was done early in the day. Everything was prepared for this grand finale, which was the removal of support
Yeah.
for the core, which literally all these floor trusses pulled the perimeter
Inward.
in and down upon itself. Yeah. So that's the last offering that I have as far as technical goes, and I thank Richard for having Captain Patterson on, and I thank him for all of the prodding and poking and ridiculing too, because I would never have gotten to this point without it.
Well, yeah, and which is to me the important part. He may be a little like when I watch they want evidence, and you know, they do want evidence,
Oh, absolutely.
but they're going to argue their point.
Well, there's evidence of thermite and the microspheres in the dust.
Right. But they're coming to another conclusion that all the I definitely know there was explosions. Everybody knows that paid attention. There's explosions, but that provides the impulse for the reaction. I mean, you know, it's Newton's law. Equal and opposite reaction. Boom.
Yeah. And that's what I've been in. That's all I've ever really been interested in is cause and effect here.
Yep. So Newton's third law, right? I see Stephen Jones. Yes, when something's pushing down, it's not moving, something's pushing up. Yeah, I have not at this point any more questions at this point. It was just a matter of those.
Right. We've gotten to know each other.
Yep.
We're old friends.
Ah,
We are old friends.
mutual.
We're both old
acquaintances.
and friends, and we have this
Yeah.
a lot of mutual interest behind us. So, Alan, what I'd like to do is set up a Zoom chat at some time in the near future with you and my friend Bill Brandon, geologist.
All right.
And what you know, with your knowledge and his knowledge of this, I just want to sit back and you know, and listen mostly, because you're both really familiar with what this presentation is all about now, and hear the way that you and I might have a couple of things I might want to interject at some point, but I just want to let it go mostly.
You know, I kind of feel like a pretender because I in no way feel that I have some sort of expertise or anything to add except for observation.
You know, your observations and Bill's are so critical in understanding the dynamics and the devices that were used.
Right. You know, I start thinking, especially when you look at these chips and that they were available, but only with the Defense Department kind of licensing.
Oh, you're talking about the nanothermite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Consequently, there's been some publications of advertising films from the manufacturers or something showing demonstrations on how the cutter, you know, charge works and the little rails they put on the beams and how they do it. I mean, I've seen these videos now. They're like, well, how are they going to do that? Well, it's right there. There it is. They're selling it. So it's just
Well, Project Plowshare. I mean, this is a great advertisement for Project Plowshare.
yeah. I start wondering. There was another gentleman that brought up kind of some bizarre, to me, bizarre that they were testing out some sort of fusion device to power the tower. I don't know who that gentleman was, but he said
Yeah,
he had,
there's been a number of really interesting. We have 1 minute, so there have been a number of interesting theories. Some of them involved the use of thermonuclear beneath the towers to form an explosive force that would travel up the center like a straw and then blow it from the top out. And there was
I can't see that happening because none of the pathways line up to the top.
not
They
only
have
that,
to
but
be-
pressure always goes to low, and as soon as
Yes.
as soon as
If
it
it hits
gets
that, it's going to spread.
right, it's not going to allow itself to be contained by a
No. No, it's going to find the flaw and it's going to exploit it.
right. And the last thing, less than a minute, the reason that they did this beneath the towers, the reason that they reduced the bedrock was to have the core subside, and that pre-stressed all of those floor truss fasteners. It would never have blown apart if they were relying on the explosives alone, because the windows would have blown out first.
Yeah. Yeah.